Okay, welcome back to the Tech Jobber podcast, and amazing guest today. She is the queen of the Miami tech scene, Melissa Medina. She is the co-founder and CEO of eMerge Americas, which, if you don't know, is the largest tech conference in the southeast of the USA. Absolutely awesome time. She has had Tom Brady and Pitbull on her stage the last 2 years, and today she's sitting down with a slightly less famous bald man with us. So, Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Chris. Too kind of an introduction. Really excited to be here and kind of dig in. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, so it's kind of a weird thing to say, but like you're basically the reason I'm here. And, because I was looking to move to Miami, I wanted some excuse, and obviously with all of the tech businesses that you helped bring down, it kind of made an easy choice since I do tech recruiting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a long journey, but it's definitely something that my family and I have been super passionate about. I'm born and raised here in Miami. There's not that many of us, but being in the tech world, growing up in Miami, the landscape, the ecosystem has just completely changed. And it's something that, we always felt that Miami and South Florida truly as a whole had all the elements to become a thriving tech hub. But it's really neat to see people like you moving here and for that global lens now to be on South Florida as a tech and entrepreneurial hub, which just wasn't the case not that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was a party city.
Vacation.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously it's a lot different now, but let's talk about, because obviously your credentials in tech are a lot more than just throwing this massive conference.
Yes, we do more than throw a big tech party.
Yeah, but it goes back to Terramark, right? So why don't you talk about that?
Sure.
What that company was and how that kind of led to eMerge.
Yeah, it's definitely a direct part of the eMerge story. It's kind of a long story, but to make a long story short, Terramark is a company that my father founded in 1980, and it started off as a real estate development company. He built a lot of buildings that you see around South Florida today, both commercial and residential. And in the late 90s, he essentially had the opportunity to build the first network access point. It's called NAP of the Americas, which is essentially a data center. And to build the first one here in South Florida because of his real estate roots. When he got that opportunity, he realized that this was, in his words, the next industrial revolution. And he was fascinated by what this building was going to do, essentially. And it was going to be, think of it as a airport for internet traffic, specifically for Latin America. And that's why it was housed here. And it put fiber under the ocean. And it made Miami one of the most connected cities in the world at the time. And he decided, I not only want to build it, I want to build and operate it. And anyone that knows my father, will say that that is not surprising coming from him. He's always had this entrepreneurial journey and bug, and he thinks big, and people call him crazy, and it's amazing. And that's what he did. He ended up building and operating Terramark, the data center company, and that turned into a global IT infrastructure and cloud computing company, and he completely divested of all his traditional real estate.
Wow. And he went all in on tech.
Yeah, went all in on tech, even though, everyone was telling him you're throwing all your eggs in one basket. You should not do that. But I was in college at the time, and I trusted him completely. I saw the passion he had about this new opportunity and this new pivot he was making with the company. I was super excited. And that's sort of where my journey began in the space, because I ended up working for him, graduated from the University of Florida, both undergrad and graduate degree in business, and then worked in the finance department in Terramark and kind of worked my way up there. And the company sold in 2011 to Verizon.
Yeah.
That's where the journey of eMerge began.
What was it like recruiting tech people? Obviously, you get the data center people, but there weren't many data centers then. I mean, you had to
very difficult
get them to come down here, basically? Or?
Such a good question, and that truly is one of the main reasons why we ended up launching eMerge. Once the company sold, the conversation my father and I had was what were the opportunities and challenges that we faced building a global tech company out of Miami, headquartered here in Miami. And one of the biggest pain points by far was recruiting talent, recruiting top-tier talent. And not because they weren't excited about the opportunity to work in Terramark, but it was more because they would say, well, if I work here for, a few years, 4 or 5 years, I don't have another opportunity.
Right.
There just wasn't massive opportunities in tech at the time. And that is actually one of the pain points that drove us, coupled with the passion we had for this community, to say, can we do something day to day that helps foster and spark the tech and entrepreneur ecosystem in South Florida? And that's where eMerge Americas was born, strictly out of that conversation.
Yeah, so let's talk about that evolution.
Sure.
So 2012 was the sale to Verizon.
2011.
2011. Okay. And you said, okay, what now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What now? I think my father retired for, I may say 2 months, and I think that might have been a long time.
Yeah.
He just couldn't do it.
He's right back into it.
Yeah. And we had a lot of conversations around that time, just around the excitement that we had about the future of South Florida and how we could potentially play a role in that. Even if it was a small role, whatever role we could play, we wanted to kind of channel the opportunities and challenges that we faced into new potential opportunities for our ecosystem. And that's where we thought, okay, what could be sort of our first project under this new mission of helping to foster an ecosystem in terms of tech and entrepreneurship in South Florida. And we studied a lot of the thriving tech hubs at the time. Think Boston, Austin, New York, Barcelona, etc. And in all of them, there was a major convening that was happening between the major stakeholders, which are entrepreneurs, investors, global tech corporations, government, and academia, bringing all of them under one roof. Just there wasn't anything happening like that anywhere near Miami. And that's where the idea of, well, why don't we create a conference here and see if it sticks, see if it resonates. We didn't know if we'd ever do it again. Took us a couple of years to plan the first edition. We opened our doors in May of 2014, and that has taken a whole other journey 10 years later.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's crazy because I moved here 3 years ago. I would see the signs for eMerge, and I was kind of like, oh, yeah, Miami Tech Conference. Yeah, that probably started 2-3 years ago.
No,
2014.
Yeah, it's been a decade.
Yeah, so let's talk about the first conference. I mean, what was that like? Obviously, you guys have never done anything like that.
No, never been in this business ever. We had a lot of pushback. Why would we be doing that in Miami? But thankfully, the silver lining is that we also truthfully had a lot of organizations that supported us. For example, the Knight Foundation, a huge nonprofit organization that helps support multiple initiatives. At the time, had a Miami program director named Matt Hagman, who's still a very important part of our community and our story. And he essentially sort of created an area of focus within the Knight Foundation that he specifically wanted to grow the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Miami, which aligned perfectly with what we wanted to do. They were our first check into eMerge to get this started. Knight Foundation was Miami-Dade County, as a county, is one of our founding partners. They believed in us from day one. So there were certain organizations that said, we trust you and we love this idea. We also realize the opportunity that building a knowledge-based economy could provide a lot more opportunities for the next generation. And I wouldn't say they fully wrapped their arms around it, but they enough to support us. And that's how we were able to actually open our doors for year one. We were hoping for, 2,500 people.
Yeah,
was our goal for year one.
Where did that?
Miami Beach Convention Center.
Okay,
so we were always thinking big. Always thinking big. If we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it right.
Yeah.
And we thought, we don't know if we're gonna do this again, but if we are, we want to build to something much bigger.
Yeah.
And let's just plant the seed and do it right from the beginning. So it's always been at the Miami Beach Convention Center. We lived through the transformation of the Miami Beach Convention Center. So I know you just got here 3 years ago, but just a few years ago, the convention center went through a full renovation. It's completely state-of-the-art now. It's beautiful. And that's been great to see too. We kind of lived through all of that. And yeah, our first show, we had around 4,500 to 5,000 people, which for us was incredible. At least it made us realize that there was definitely traction, and we felt there was a void in the market to have something like that here in Miami.
2 days?
2 days.
So it's always been 2 days?
It's 2 days that's open to the public. And then there's always the day before, there's sort of an invite-only day also within the Miami Beach Convention Center that's fully focused on founders. Founders that are part of our accelerator program, which we could go into later. But that day, it's one of my favorite days, actually. They practice their pitches. They meet with mentors, with investors, with corporate partners. And it's a day for them as founders to also connect with each other. A lot of them say it's like founder therapy.
Yeah, because a lot of them are working from home, I feel like.
Especially now.
Then they're in their like little bubble.
Absolutely.
Where now it's like you're talking to someone going through similar challenges. Oh, here's how we solved that. So it's probably great for us.
Such a good point. That's actually also affected the conference in a way, in a positive way, which is really interesting, that companies, whether small or large, that are still, a lot of them are still fully remote or hybrid, are using the conference as a way to actually meet in person and get together. Yeah. And I've seen even co-founders who met each other online during COVID, met each other for the first time in person at eMerge. We're hearing so many of these stories, kind of taking advantage of that, convening in person, which was something that pre-COVID, was a little bit different of a dynamic.
Yeah. So the first one, I mean, what were you guys probably weren't looking to cash out big on the first. I mean, was it an economic success with the 5,000, or was it kind of running even the first year? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No. And we also, going back to us getting into an industry that we had never been in before, like any founder journey, you make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Probably overpaid for a lot of things, just not knowing. But that's, where hiring a great team and people that have been in this industry for a long time to kind of open the hood and tell us, where can we make changes. And also, for us, truthfully, as a family, it was, we want to see if this works. It's a way of giving back no matter what. And it really wasn't about the economic gain. It was about, can we truly help spark and foster something? And that now has taken just a life of its own. And now eMerge has been 10 years. We are much more, I know we focus a lot on the conference and the event, but we are a year-round effort. We're much more than a conference and an event. That's just sort of the culmination yearly now in the spring of a year's worth of work. And it's been a really exciting journey to see in parallel what's just happened in our community, especially after COVID, for sure.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by like the logistics of these type of things.
It's complicated.
It's very
complicated.
What were like, obviously you guys were super successful in what you did, and then you get into this new space.
This is completely new.
And it's kind of like, what were some of the biggest surprise? I mean, like, whatever, like, oh, the cleaning staff cost this much. Oh my, like, we didn't even think about, like, what were just some of the big shock things for you?
All of them. I swear it was, the amount of effort and people and independent contractors and companies that it takes to put on a global convening of any kind is very complicated. And there are a lot of moving parts, and it's also live, right? And so anything can happen. I mean, we've had fire alarms that have gone off. We've had, speakers that, run into traffic, so it's like real time. You're navigating all of this. That was something very new for us.
Yeah.
When we opened our doors and navigated those first 2 days. But I think the takeaway was, this was just so exciting to see happen. I grew up in Miami Beach, so literally in my backyard, and to see the potential that it could have, even given, all the mistakes that we made, and that, it was just exciting to see. We opened the doors and realized, like, this is not just going to be once. We want to do this again, and we want to grow the team, and we want to do a lot more in this space.
Yeah. So let's talk about the growth of the conference. 2014, you had 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot more now. Let's talk about the in-between.
Sure. Yeah, it's just grown organically year after year. This past year, 2024, we had over 20,000 attendees from over 60 countries. And, obviously we wanted to keep growing, but it's not so much anymore about, number of people as it is the quality of connections that are being made, of making sure that those that attend want to come back and that they're telling their networks that they were able to, meet some great people, perhaps, meet an investor that has helped them now post eMerge. Corporate partners, have met talent that they've recruited. All of those success stories is what excites us the most of what we've created. And I think one thing that happened this year, that was probably the highlight of 2024, is that the Washington Economics Group did an independent study on eMerge and our last 10 years, like what has been the impact on our state. And they gave us the report the day before eMerge 2024 this year, so we were able to announce it at the conference. And, we've helped create over 10,000 jobs in our state, which are 80% are high-wage jobs. And we've had over $2.6 billion in economic impact in our state. And that just was the highlight and makes me realize I want to do a lot more of what we're doing, because that's the mission. We want to make sure that it's a positive snowball effect and that these efforts combined, because it's not just us, are sustainable. And that my kids can kind of look back and, and see that this ecosystem has continued to grow. That J-curve effect continues.
Yeah, and again, I've been there the last 2 years. And obviously, the celebrity headliners kind of draw people in, and let's face it, Miami Beach draws people in as well from all around.
It's not a tough sell anymore.
It's not hard to twist people's arms
to come to Miami Beach in March or April.
But it's like, besides the it's not just like you're sitting there for speakers. There's so many booths. You're walking around. There's like dancing robots. They have those robotic dogs. There's just all sorts of crazy things. You can get lost in like the maze.
Interactive exhibits. And we're not shying away from the fact that we do host this in Miami, right? This is multicultural. There's music, energy, and we want eMerge, the conference, to feel different than other tech conferences. And hopefully people that attend feel that way and leave there, of course, making good connections, doing business, but also having fun.
Yeah.
Let's have fun while we're working too.
Yeah. And it's like, I would always recommend, what's like there's general admission and there's the one up.
There's VIP and there's standard.
Yeah, I'd recommend the VIP because that's what I've done the last 2 years. You get kind of a private area to sit. You get, there's like
off the record conversations with the keynotes.
Yep.
It's pretty cool.
Espresso machines.
Yes.
You're just
food and beverage.
I'm like jacked up on espresso the whole conference. And then the first night there's kind of like a mass happy hour for everyone, which is awesome.
Lincoln Road Block Party. Yes.
Yeah. Right down on Lincoln. And then for the VIP, you have the closing party on the beach, which is insane.
So much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been doing that the last few years, and it's closing on the sand. Your feet are on the sand, DJ, sun kind of coming down. And again, it's a way to express that we are here in Miami, and it's a beautiful geographic location, and we want to make sure that we're highlighting that as well.
Yeah. And so when did this, like we were talking about, this is now it's not just, okay, we planned for one big event.
No, it's not.
Year-round kind of operation with events and you said the incubator as well.
Yeah, we have an accelerator program.
When did that come in?
So the accelerator program actually launched the year that we opened our doors to eMerge, and that was because we felt that entrepreneurs had to be sort of the nucleus of what we were trying to build. Because if entrepreneurs are able to scale their companies, if they're able to hire talent, and that happened through a platform that we provided, it was going to create, I think, a solid ecosystem.
Yeah.
But the accelerator has definitely morphed since we first launched. For example, we started off as more of a pitch competition / showcase for entrepreneurs. And now it's a 7-week program. We select 100 companies, startup companies, early stage and later stage companies to be part of our program. It's always starts 7 weeks before the conference.
Wow.
And that is because it's virtual, but then it ends and culminates at the conference. So when you walk in, if you remember from this year or last year, right when you walk through the doors, you'll see Startup Alley. All of those 100 startups, this year we had 110 for our 10th anniversary, but all of those startups are part of our accelerator program. And that's sort of the culmination of a 7-week program that they've been through with us. And then they go through a pitch style competition live at eMerge. Yep. They pitch on stage.
Some wild pitches,
it's
too.
Amazing.
One guy had seawalls, I remember. Healthcare apps.
Yes. Health tech, fintech, climate tech, a lot of AI and quantum solutions now. So pretty innovative, deep tech happening and showcased.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. Yeah, the accelerator program. And then we just launched a new pilot program focused on SMBs in Miami-Dade County, providing digital access, digital training, digital resources to them. And they will be featured at the conference as well.
Wow.
Kind of all ties in to the conference, but we're working every day.
What type of things are the, because a lot of people have good ideas and just the execution is a disaster, right? So what type of things are you guys doing to help these founders kind of bring this thing to market if you see a good idea?
Really good question. That's the sort of role of the accelerator. And that's that we are bringing in a lot of our partners. So think of the Googles of the world, the Microsofts of the world, major funds that are leading these workshops and boot camps throughout the accelerator to give them the tools to help them make less mistakes as, we're building a business. As an entrepreneur myself, it's a roller coaster.
Sure.
But if you're armed with good mentors, with a great network, with good corporate partners, with other digital tools to help your marketing efforts, whatever it may be, with funds that are giving you sort of direction into the VC landscape, it's super helpful. And we're seeing great success come from these startups that are able to go through this program. And I think the mentorship piece is key. We work with an organization called VMT, Venture Mentoring Network, Venture Mentoring Team, VMT. And they provide at no cost to our startups that are part of our program hours upon hours of mentorship. They're able to perfect their pitch. They're able to answer some tough questions. Sometimes a lot of founders are pitching to their friends and family.
Yeah.
Which is great. You want friends and family to be supportive and perhaps even help you seed the company. But a lot of times, and I say this from personal experience too, your friends and family are not going to be your hardest critics.
Right. And they don't know to ask those questions that...
Yeah, that these mentors that had experience in failing and succeeding.
Right.
Get them.
Because, if I just said a good idea... people that didn't know any better, that haven't been through those
of course.
things, would be like,
natural.
That's a great
idea. Amazing, yes.
Put it to market.
Exactly.
It's not that easy.
No, there's a lot of steps that go into play. And, we know the reality too, where, and I don't know the statistics recently, but, in general, 9 out of 10 startups don't make it.
Right.
And we really are trying to change that. And we're also trying to change helping underrepresented founders is a big part of our DNA. I'm born and raised here, but first-generation American, immigrant parents, Latina, female in tech, and the numbers are just dismal in funding underrepresented founders. So part of our year-round effort, we have something called the Empower series, and it specifically focuses on underrepresented founders, Hispanic founders. We also do a lot for veteran founders, Black founders, and helping bridge those gaps. Super important to us.
Yeah. And, obviously, like you said, the stats are not good on a startup. 90% fail. Is there any common Is it just
denominator.
because it's hard, or is there one thing you say this usually is what kind of kills people?
I think, unfortunately, the reality is that a lot of the time it's just funding.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really hard to keep startups alive. It really is. And it's a catch-22 because you want to grow your team. You need experts in a domain perhaps that you're not familiar with. You need to hire that technical expert to grow. But managing the scaling and how fast you're burning is a difficult task.
And do you ever, I mean, we've all seen the founders that they get the funding and suddenly their new Lambo pulls up, right? Do you ever see anything crazy like that?
Using the funds.
Yeah, misuse or anything?
Thankfully, I haven't seen that much, to be honest. I feel the founders that we've been working with, and this is at this point, we have over 1,000 founders that have graduated from our accelerator program in the last 10 years, have been phenomenal people. And their heart is in it. They're in it for the right reasons. The ones that have not been able to make it, I think it's been unfortunate. And sometimes it's also just there isn't a market for the solution they're creating. As good as an idea is, if there isn't traction, it's hard to make it happen. But I'm seeing incredible entrepreneurial activity throughout the region, throughout the U.S., throughout Latin America, and it's exciting to be a part of it.
What are some interesting things you've seen? Maybe not give away the exact pitch, but like, oh, there's an idea for this, or, like we were talking about, the seawalls was kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, Kind Design's a really cool company. They're 3D printing like sustainable seawalls, and her name is Anya, the founder. She's doing phenomenal. Had an amazing lead round by Mark Cuban and his company. They're just doing phenomenal. We see amazing ideas in the health tech space too. There's a lot in the intersection between healthcare and technology and advancing, tools that can help us in the healthcare system. We see a lot around fintech and payments, and a lot around artificial intelligence now, which is super cool to see how that's advancing opportunities and challenges too. I think that
anything interesting in health tech that you could discuss,
we've seen, for example, tools in AI that are helping earlier detection of cancer, specifically breast cancer, in the tool that we saw, something that will hopefully be over the counter, which is just fascinating to think. Of course, all of this takes, again, a lot of funding, and there's also a lot of regulations in the healthcare space that makes it difficult to go from idea to execution. But I'm just fascinated by what I'm seeing out there in that space. But that's one of them. Yeah.
We had Akash Parvadakar. That's all he does. He was PhD in just AI to diagnose breast cancer a couple episodes back, and that was super exciting and hopeful. But
extremely,
the red tape
it's hard.
Is extreme.
Yeah,
for good reasons. You don't want someone,
of course,
to miss that.
There has to be regulation. Yeah, there has to be regulation, no question.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure it's accurate and effective, and that's why it takes so long. But I do think that, AI has been around a long time. This isn't new. But the pace now that AI is moving forward is exciting to see, because I think that there's going to be a lot more that we're going to see come from it in the next few years.
Yeah. And as far as you as an investor yourself, what things are kind of make you perk an eyebrow up when you hear about, oh, we have an AI for this, or what type of ideas are you guys kind of looking at right now?
Yeah. So traditionally, we invested a lot, hyper-focused on cybersecurity. Then we went into more of the early stage investing, and it was really more based on the founder and them sort of having that it factor and believing in them, because as we mentioned before, early stage ideas, you just never know how they're going to turn out. So it wasn't really so much industry specific. It was more opportunistic. And now, recently, we launched an early stage fund called Medina Ventures, and it's focused on deep tech and frontier technology. So all on AI and quantum for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of becoming big believers in that space.
I'm always curious to ask this to investors. What do you do if just the idea is a 10 out of 10 and the guy or girl is just a dud as far as presenting? I mean, what do you try to coach them up, or you just say like, hey, listen, you're going to have to just be behind the scenes?
So, I mean, I haven't seen any that are just like outright, this is just not going to work. If the idea is really good, for the most part, I have found that the founders are exceptional and also see who they're surrounding themselves with and their team and how they talk about their founder as well. But of course, I think in the beginning, it's try to help as much as possible. I think we're very active as investors, and we want founders that we're investing in to access our network, and so we want to help them scale. And so those that are open to feedback, of course, I think are the ones that we're most drawn to. But they should be the experts in that space, right? Like we're not experts in every space. We happen to look through pitch decks and think, okay, they have good traction. This idea is phenomenal. The founder has a good background. But it's a long due diligence period. It's not something that we take lightly.
Mm. Yeah, and so you have technical experts on your team that are just sorting through everything.
Completely, and that do full due diligence. Absolutely. We have industry experts, thankfully, because of eMerge and the connection to eMerge over the last 10 years. We have a vast network of industry experts that also help us that we could tap into and say, hey, this is a new solution we're seeing in the health tech space. You are an expert in this space. What do you think about this, before we would even think of taking the next step? So it's a full team and process, but it's fun. It's so much fun, and it's definitely a direct correlation to the work we've been doing with entrepreneurs for the last 10 years. And we realized we need to create a formal vehicle. We had been investing, angel investing, and just like I said before, opportunistically, but now we just actually launched our early stage fund.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah, and earlier you mentioned the government aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you guys work very closely with Mayor Suarez.
Absolutely.
What is this process like? Obviously, it's probably pretty easy to get him on board with everything you guys are doing, but what was that kind of evolution of getting the city government, the state government, getting everyone on board for what you guys are up to?
Yeah, I think thankfully with Mayor Suarez, we've known each other a very, very long time. We're both born and raised in Miami. And even way before he was mayor, he was an advocate and a champion and an ambassador of our efforts. I think one thing that differentiates Miami and South Florida is that we do have a lot of government support, local and state. And I don't think you see that a lot in whether it's emerging tech markets or already existing thriving tech markets. There's sometimes like a clash between government and the private sector. And I really think that that's one of our advantages right now. And we've just been really fortunate. Of course, in the beginning, there was tons of government officials too. They were like, why are you doing this? Why? This doesn't make any sense.
Well, what was their hesitation?
They just felt that it wasn't going to work in Miami.
Yeah.
It just wasn't top
like
of
the
mind.
party city mentality.
Let's focus on tourism. There was a financial industry, I think, that has been brewing for a long time in Miami. Mm-hmm. But I think part of it was just misunderstanding it or not really realizing the benefits of introducing this incredible sector into our community. But again, I think it wasn't out of malice in any way. It was just more of, okay, we need to educate and get everyone on board. And we've always had something called the eGov Summit within eMerge, even since year one in 2014, so that we're able to have those conversations around the intersection between the public and private partnerships, and so that government leaders are invited and they're seeing for themselves all this revolutionary technology and innovation and get excited about it.
Right.
And that's been part of our thesis from the beginning. And luckily, we've been growing that significantly.
Yeah, and obviously those are some of the most successful ideas when the government is spending on it, right?
Absolutely. And there are a lot of opportunities for startups to innovate within the government sector. Kind of going back to the healthcare sector, it's difficult to penetrate that. But once you're in and connected within the government, those contracts are a very long time. And they're,
very lucrative.
Exactly.
Ironclad.
It could be extremely lucrative. So that's part of why we want to bring those two stakeholders together all the time, too. We want our entrepreneurs and startups within our program that are innovating within the GovTech space to be able to connect with those decision makers.
Yeah. And one question I always ask to successful women like yourself, any tips for aspiring tech professionals, entrepreneurs, investors for women?
Yeah, I would say, the piece of advice I would give, and this is for men or women, it's not really gender specific, but something that my father always taught me, even from being a little girl, he would always say, Melissa, keep your word. Keep your word because it's going to go a long way. And then as I got older and was in the business, and he's like, even if you're signing a contract, what's most important is your word. And if you can't keep it for whatever reason, because, right, there are pivots that happen or curveballs that happen, make sure you're communicating as to why you couldn't deliver on your word. And that's a piece of advice that I'll take with me everywhere, and I'll share it because I do believe that your reputation, keeping your word, your trust just builds a bond and a relationship that you never know in the future how that, person that you kept your word with will come back and say, now let's do more business together. But I think that's a piece of advice that, was kind of ingrained in me from a little girl to now that I share a lot.
Yeah, and vice versa. If you break your word, you never know where that person's going to be in 5 to 10 years.
Exactly. It could come back and affect you. It's just not worth it. Lines of communication open, and try to under-promise, over-deliver, but always keep your word.
Yeah, and what about work-life balance? Because on top of everything she has,
doesn't exist.
Everything we've discussed, she also has 5 children too.
I do,
which is wild.
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot about work-life balance, and my response is it's very relative and it's very individualistic, if that makes sense. Like, my definition of work-life balance may be very different than another parent's definition of work-life balance. And my truthful, honest answer is that it doesn't exist. I don't think there's a perfect balance. I think it's a daily choice. And I think there are some days where there is no stopping me from being at my son's lacrosse game or my daughter's volleyball game or whatever it may be at school. Like, no matter what, I've made that promise. Again, keeping my word, I'm going to deliver. And then there are some days where I know I have to travel and work has to come first. And it doesn't mean that work comes first every day. Of course, my children are, my life, and they are my top priority. But at some days, I don't see them as much as I want to. I don't pick up from school. There are certain sacrifices that you make with being a working parent as well. And I think that work-life question it's a daily answer to yourself. And I do a lot of planning on Sundays. That's my personal way of looking at my week ahead and seeing what's happening between Monday and Saturday of the upcoming week. How does my work and personal life balance look like? Can I make some changes? Can I say no to some things? And that's how I kind of evaluate what my week is going to look like in terms of work and life. And I involve my kids as much as possible in a lot of what I'm doing. Yeah. They go to pitch competitions. Every single one has been at eMerge. My oldest is 17 now. He's been there the 10 years of eMerge. And my youngest, who's 8, was born in 2016, 2 weeks before eMerge, the conference that year in 2016. So 2 years in, and she's been there basically as an infant. So involve them a lot, and I want them to see, what we're building, and I want them to be a part of it. A lot of communicating with them. But do I make mistakes and fail either as a mom or a leader? Absolutely. That's just life.
Yeah. Have they already begun to take to technology or?
Oh, yeah, definitely. My oldest is an entrepreneur himself, wants to study business, is always thinking of ideas and yeah.
Well, it's kind of in his blood at this point.
Hopefully. I always say I hope that I absorbed, even a little bit of my dad's sort of grit as an entrepreneur. And then, I hope that for their sake, they also inherit some of that as well. It's
kind of like those, NFL or NBA players that their dad was in the league. So then when they get there, things are not shocking to them.
Yeah.
It's kind of just natural. Okay, this is how you operate.
Definitely. But I think important to note that nothing is, even with my parents and my brother and I, it was always about do what you're passionate about. I always loved being in the family business. Even when I was 6, 7 years old and my father was building buildings, I loved going to look at sites and I loved being in the boardroom. And then I have an older brother who's a musician and he's a bassist in a country band, lives in Nashville. He's the real rock star of the family.
Wow.
And my parents always said, follow your passion. He had a guitar from when he was 5 years old, learned to play the piano on his own. I think that's a very important part of how, at least in my opinion, you kind of teach your kids too. Of course, I want them to be exposed to everything we're building. I hope they're passionate about it, but if they're not, that's totally okay.
Yeah. And why don't we take it home? Let's just give one last pitch about eMerge.
Sure.
I certainly will be there for the 3rd year in a row.
Thanks, Chris.
Why don't you just give what's going to be like this year?
Yeah. I hope to see you again there. And eMerge Americas, the 11th edition of the conference is March 27th and 28th, 2025 at the Miami Beach Convention Center. Expect a lot of interactive exhibits, expect amazing inspirational speakers, and expect to have a lot of fun too and network. And I hope to see you all there.
Yeah. And actually one last thing.
Sure.
If people have a pitch, how do they get a hold of you? How do they get a hold of?
Perfect timing. So applications to be part of our accelerator program are open right now. They're open through December 31st. And any startup globally, so it's not a specific geographic location, can apply for free. And we make the selections of our 100 startups in January, and then the program begins in February. They can find all the information on emergeamericas.com/programs, and they'll see all the startup program information. They could apply as an accelerator. Or if you just want to kind of look through our website and see what we're all about, it's just emergeamericas.com.
Wow.
Find all the info there.
Yeah. And so if you have a great pitch, check them out.
Send it over. I want to see it.
Make that top
I look
100.
through as many of them as I can. It is definitely by far my most favorite part of what I do at eMerge is meeting with entrepreneurs, looking through their pitches, connecting them with our network, helping them scale. It's so much fun to see and be part of their journeys. So I hope to see your pitch.
Yeah, awesome. And if you guys see me at the event, come say hi.
I think we should do a follow-up tech jobber podcast at eMerge. Just saying.
That would be awesome.
Just saying.
We should definitely do that.
Yes.
But listen, thanks so much for making this happen.
Thank you.
Your schedule is